Hello friends, Pastor Chester Hitchcock here again with the Old Testament Gospel Memory Course, and this lesson is going to be a review. It's a self-test, and I'm going to share with you how to review what you've already learned, how to practice it and memorize it and keep it firm in your mind, but also how to practice in such a way to where you'll be able to find the stories when you need them. And what I am going to do here with you is I have some, not flashcards, but I have the stories that we need to remember from the Old Testament. And I'm just going to mix them up here so that you can see that I'm not choosing them in any order. Well, I don't want to drop any. And I'm going to mix them up, and I'm just going to drop them into this box. And I'm going to take them out of the box one at a time, and I'm going to share with you how I remember where to find those stories. I don't have it written on the back. I don't use flashcards. I just have it in my mind, and I want to be able to demonstrate to you how I recall it. Keep in mind that in the Old Testament, a little different from the New Testament Gospel Memory Course where we go one chapter at a time, in the Old Testament we just take a book and we remember just a few things from each one of those books. But no one comes along and asks, what do you find in a particular chapter? They generally might ask, where do you find this story or that story? Or in your mind you're wondering, where do you find this story? In all of the years that I've been teaching this, I've only had one person one time to ask me what I find in a particular chapter. I was sharing with the bookstore about my gospel memory course so that they could stock that memory course in their bookstore, and I shared with them that I could walk through the New Testament in any order and tell them at least one thing that's going on in every single chapter. And the bookstore manager said, "Oh, really? You can do that, huh?" And I said, "Yes, give me a try." And he said, "Okay, what do you find in Acts chapter 29? I thought for a second and I said, "There is no Acts chapter 29. And he said, "Really? There's no 29? I said, "No, there's only 28 chapters in the book of Acts." So that's the only time that anyone has ever asked me a chapter. But frequently someone might ask me about a story, or they might tell me a story, or I might want to tell them a story and share with them where to find it in the scriptures. So one of the things that I do when I'm practicing the Old Testament, keep in mind we've only done the first 5 books of the Old Testament in these lessons, and we put them in a filing cabinet. And we have Genesis in the top drawer, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And when we open the drawer, we see activity going on. In Genesis, it begins with a generator, and it goes through a sort of a story about a football game. And then in book of Exodus, we see an exit sign to tell us that it's Exodus. And when we turn on a light switch, we see a baby that is born, which is Moses. And it goes through a little bit of a story of getting that baby some baby formula. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, when we open the drawer for Leviticus, we saw things levitate out, and we want to look for those pictures. All of these pictures are related to Numbers that have pictures so that we can remember the chapters that it's found in. And then when we go to Numbers, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers, when we open the book for Numbers, or the drawer for Numbers, we see calculator, and everything that comes out of the book of Numbers has a calculator that helps us remember the book of Numbers. And finally, for Deuteronomy, we see a whole bunch of money when we open the drawer, and beside it, a dude with no money. And we work through some stories with the dude with no money. So here's what I'm going to do. If you have gone through all of those with me, you're familiar with those numbers and with those pictures. And so I'm just going to reach into the box. I'm going to pull one out. I hope I only have one. I'm going to show it to you. I ended up with 2. I'm going to show it to you. You got it? The Red Sea crossing. As you can see, I have nothing on the back that's going to help me. The Red Sea crossing. Where do we find the Red Sea crossing? Well, the first thing that goes in my mind, I remember that in the story when I went to get the baby formula for Moses, which is going to tell me that it's in the book of Exodus, that I fell into a mud puddle as deep as the Red Sea, and I lost my ring, which is going to give me a number 14. So it's in Exodus chapter 14. And I reach in here and I get another one. Make sure I've only got one. Show it to you. Spies to Canaan. As you can see, I have nothing written on the back. And spies to Canaan, I remember that the spy is a witch. And witch is going to give me the number 13. But I also remember that the witch comes out of a drawer and she's got a calculator so that she can count and calculate all of the things that she's spying, and calculator gives me numbers, so it's Numbers chapter 13. And as I reach into this and I pull this one out, make sure I've got it up right. Esau sells his birthright. And when Esau sells his birthright, he sells his birthright for a bowl of soup. And that reminds me that there's this soup that costs 25 cents plus your birthright or your inheritance on the way to the football game. And on the way to the football game tells me that's in the book of Genesis, because that's how we built that story. So it's going to be in Genesis, and we sold the soup cost 25 cents plus your inheritance, so that's going to give me chapter 25. So that's in the book of Genesis chapter 25. And as I reach in here, do you see how I'm doing this? I'm recreating the pictures. And it's important that we know how to do this, because we don't want to fall into what Winnie the Pooh does. When Winnie the Pooh wants to remember something, he goes, think, 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 think. When you try to think, you lose it. What you've got to do is regenerate and recreate and make funny pictures, because you know it's all built on pictures. And here we go here. Moses dies on Mount Nebo. And in this, I remember that Moses' knees are bowed. And when his knees are bowed, he had to sit down on a stool, which is going to give me a 3. And he wants us to put him in our car and take him to the top of the mountain, which car is going to be 4, and a 3 and a 4 is 34. And that's actually with the dude with no money. And so that tells me it's Deuteronomy chapter 34. And as I reach in here, Abram called from Ur. And Abram is called from Ur. Abe was bringing egg salad sandwiches. Eggs is going to give me 12. And he's bringing egg salad sandwiches to the football game, which tells me that's in Genesis chapter 12. And when I look in here, make sure I've got 2. I find here the 10 Commandments. Where do I find the 10 Commandments? I remember after I went to get some baby formula for the baby, which was Moses, which is telling me that it's in the book of Exodus, and I came back, and the people who were watching the baby while I was gone, they said, help us to stop smoking. And I said, then you've got to memorize the 10 Commandments. And the smoking is cigarettes, which is 20, and that's in the book of Exodus, Exodus chapter 20. And I reach in here, and I pull another one out. And here I have the trees in the Garden of Eden. The 2 trees in the Garden of Eden is when I flipped on the light switch in the book of Genesis, and 2 trees grew out of the generator, out of the top of the generator. So it's Genesis chapter 2. Aaron and his sons are consecrated. Aaron and his sons are consecrated. When they're consecrated, they were wearing roller skates when they're consecrated and when they were serving as priests. And those roller skates levitated out of the drawer. So that tells me it's Leviticus, and 8 tells me, or roller skates tells me it's chapter 8, Leviticus chapter 8. God sends the quail. When God sends the quail, I see the quail fly out of a drawer, and they fly up and they land on a goalpost, which is going to tell me that it's chapter 11. But it also, I see those quail having calculators in their mouths, which tells me that it's the book of Numbers. So Numbers chapter 11 is where God sends the quail. Moses is born. I open the book of Exodus and I flip on the light and I see a baby floating in the bulrushes when I turn on the light switch, and the light switch tells me that it's chapter 2. Joseph's brothers see him again. Well, I do remember that Joseph's brothers see him when he's actually, his name is on the back of a football jersey, and he's wearing a football jersey that is number 45, and he's actually the quarterback. And so number 45, and it's in the book of Genesis, because that's where we have that story about the football game. Noah brings animals into the ark, and I remember that Noah is sitting beside the two trees of the generator, and he's asking you to help him bring the animals into the ark. And we say, well, we'll have to roll the dice to see if we're going to bring them. And the dice tells me chapter 7, and so it's chapter 7 of the book of Genesis. The building of the sanctuary. Well, the building of the sanctuary, I remember, took 40 days, so that's going to tell me it's chapter 40. And I remember that it's when the people who were taking care of the baby, which would have been Moses in in the book of Exodus, that it would have been chapters 26 through 40 is the building of the sanctuary, which I'll get to why I remember it's 26 through 40, but 40 is going to give us that chapter as well. Oh, this is going to help. Told to bring an offering to build the sanctuary, because when we came back to help the children and the people wanted to stop smoking, as they left, they gave a quarter, which is chapter 25, and they gave us a quarter to help build a sanctuary. And then we know that the building of the sanctuary went from chapter 25, which would have been chapter 26, all the way through to chapter 40. The Day of Atonement. I remember that the Day of Atonement, I had a candy bar, if you remember, and I held it up for you to look at it, and it was one of those one candy bars. It's a healthy candy bar, and I put the letters AT on the front of it. At one, or atone, and atone means to be at one, and that candy bar levitated out of the drawer. So candy bar is 16, and when it levitated, it tells me it's the book of Leviticus chapter 16. Joseph dies. This is a story that I know goes on in the book of Exodus, because he dies on the 50-yard line in the football game. And so in the 50-yard line, I know that it's chapter 50 that Joseph dies, because the quarterback gets tackled on the 50-yard line. I think I'm running low on here. The laws of cleanliness. The laws of cleanliness, I remember that there is a football jersey with a paycheck that is pinned to it to get it cleaned, and the football jersey levitates out of the book of Leviticus, so I know it's the book of Leviticus, and football is going to give me 11, and the paycheck's going to give me 15, so the laws of cleanliness are in chapters 11 through 15. Balaam the donkey and the angel. I remember Balaam wanted to shoot that donkey a number of times. Oh, that's going to give me the book of Numbers. And he wanted to shoot him with his 22. So that gives me the number chapter 22. Numbers chapter 22. Joseph is sold into slavery. That's that story of the football game that is going on, because I remember that we're on our way to the football game and we wanted to stop at Joe's to get something to eat, but his brothers sold him for tickets on the 37-yard line. So that's going to be Genesis chapter 37. The second giving of the 10 Commandments, I remember that the dude that had no money, which is Deuteronomy, I reached in and gave him some money with one hand, and with the other hand, with gloves on, so that they're number 5, I hand him a copy of the 10 Commandments. So Deuteronomy chapter 5 is the second giving of the 10 Commandments. Do you see how we're doing this? If you make yourself some flashcards or some little strips of pictures like this, 3 cities of refuge. I remember that the dude with no money had a golf bag that had refuse from 3 cities of refuge. And so it's Deuteronomy, and golf bag is going to give me chapter 19. We can stop here at this point. This is just an example. And sometimes I like to make a list of them or write them on slips of paper or make flashcards and then recreate in my mind the funny stories and to remember how I remember the numbers and what drawers they came out of. This is really essential for your practicing to keep this in your mind. And as we move through the Old Testament, eventually, then it's going to be important that you remember that the first 5 books of Moses are all in a filing cabinet. In Genesis, you've got a generator. In Exodus, you've got an exit sign. In Leviticus, things levitate out. And in Numbers, you've got a number pad. And in Deuteronomy, you've got a dude with no money. So as you practice these things and keep them anchored into your mind, I pray that God will give you more and more opportunities to use them and share them with others. If you find that this video has been helpful, give me a thumbs up. And if you have not subscribed to my channel yet, please click on that subscribe button. Don't forget to ring the bell and choose all, just so that you can be sure to get a notification the next time one of these videos come up. God bless you, and happy memories.